The next topic that we're looking at is actually at the core of what Asia Berlin is about. It's about how to strengthen the ties between Asia and Germany. And I'm very happy to welcome three persons. We have Karena Belin. She will be moderating a conversation between two distinguished gentlemen. One is Dr. Ibrahim Akbar Habibi and Dr. Philipp Rösler. Please welcome to the stage, all three of them. Thank you.
Should we sit in order? Apparently, yes. Very good. Thank you very much. Great to be back here in Berlin. So we decided to hold the panel in English, even though both distinguished guests are very fluent, completely fluent in German. I'll start with an introduction, and it's difficult to try to introduce in a concise way people that arguably don't really need an introduction, right? So I'll start off here to my left with Ilham. So Dr. Ilham Habibi. You are a co-founder and a shareholder of an investment company in Indonesia called PT Iltabi Rekatan. But you are not only an investor through that holding company, you're also personally very much involved as an angel investor. You are heading in Indonesia also a association called Bantingnas, the National ICT Council of Indonesia, as the chief executive, a very interesting think tank and advisory association. You're the co-founder of the very newly established Habibi Innovation Incubator platform. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and I guess more to come. And you're also very, very active as a chairman of the board of the trustees of the Habibi Center, an NGO that is very, very fond on promoting democracy. So welcome to Berlin. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
And here now to my right, Philipp, Dr. Philipp Rösler. So again, you really do not need an introduction, particularly not here in Berlin. You were born in Vietnam, but grew up mostly in Germany. And you had a phenomenal political career here. You served, and I'll just pick a few, one as the Federal Minister of Health from 2009 to 2011. And then you were serving as Economics and Technology Minister, Federal Minister here, and then as Vice Chancellor for Germany from 2011 to 2013. At that time, you were also the chairman of the FDP. And then it was the World Economic Forum that brought you to Switzerland, right? And so you're still there, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well later on. And you are now really very, very active on a couple of managing and advisory boards. You're serving also on the supervisory board of a lot of Swiss international companies. And one of the things that's very dear to my heart, I'm pretty passionate about in the Web3 arena, you're also the chairman of the board of Crypto Valley Ventures in Zug and an ambassador of the blockchain nation Switzerland. So welcome to Berlin, or welcome back to Berlin as well. Maybe my first question should be to both of you. What did I forget? Was there something that is particularly dear to your heart that you want to make sure you mention?
Okay, I think one thing you should mention is I'm truly an aerospace guy.
Ah, right, you're the engineer, yes.
Yeah, I'm an aerospace engineer, and that's why I studied in Germany, and most people know me in the world for that, actually. Not so much about IT, although I'm very active in IT, but the thing first in my mind is always airplanes and rockets and these kind of things. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Philipp, anything that I forgot?
No, I haven't known, but so even before politics, my first passion was actually flying. So I started with 14 with my pilot license. I'm still flying. I'm also in a sort of aerospace startup in a board. So we try to bring once hypersonic planes. So yeah, I haven't known. See, we have a lot to talk.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, well, this panel continues after the conference, I'm sure. So again, I think for those who know me, know that I love to start all of the panels or firesides by asking my distinguished guests a very, very bold statement about the topic. It's also to make it much easier for you guys to tweet. So, Ilham, if I can ask you, what would be your bold statement you want to make sure everybody in this room walks away with?
Okay, I think just hitting at the title, Asia and Germany. Asia is so complex. You have to, in your mind, subdivide. There's South Asia, there's Southeast Asia, East Asia, Central Asia. Only then you can get your head around it, what one should do regarding Asia. And even what I mentioned as these regions, they're still very complex. So Asia is just so big and so complex, it's just impossible to have one recipe for the whole of Asia. You have to have many, many recipes.
Fantastic, thank you. And Philipp, maybe for you, just that one big, bold opening statement. Is there something that you want to make sure everybody takes away with?
Okay, so the German economy has currently a strategy called China +1, which means they remain in China, part of Asia, but they're looking around. And this is the biggest opportunity for the rest of Asia. And I think this is cool excitement. Top of mind, by the way, is ASEAN, and top of mind in ASEAN is Vietnam. I'm a little biased, but I think it's quite exciting what happens now and the great opportunity for Asia.
Wonderful. I'm very much biased about Hong Kong, but we're not going to talk about that here on the panel. We have two experts from Indonesia and with background from Vietnam. So Ilham, let's dive a little bit maybe from a top bird view first into how would you assess the current state of affairs and economic ties between Asia and Berlin, or let's say particular Indonesia and Berlin?
Yeah, thanks. I think I should start with Indonesia, yeah. Well, Indonesia is a very big country, as everybody knows. It's the fourth largest in the world, I think. Size-wise, it's even larger than the US. So it's an island state, it's very complicated. And I think the ties between Indonesia and Germany are very historic. Some of the big companies have been around for more than 100 years. They were there already in colonial times. I think the big challenge is for German companies to establish themselves when they're not multinational companies. The smaller ones, which are still very large, so-called Mittelstand, they are not so easily to be persuaded to come to countries like Indonesia. It takes a while. They need to have patience. They need to build a network, a strong network of people they know, they trust, and only then after a while they can get their foot on the ground, and then but once they're there, they're trusted, they have a good future, I think. Yeah. So that's a big challenge. That's one thing I have to say, and the other is actually there's always a big, it's not only the Indonesian companies or government complaining about that, but even the German community in Indonesia. That German government doesn't come enough to Indonesia when it comes to the big shots. I'm talking about ministers and the chancellor himself or herself. Mm-hmm. And that is needed. I think in Asia, it is largely expected they need really the top guns need to be there themselves, not just the second or third tier. But really, the top people need to be there consistently, not only once, but over and over again. It's, I mean, business in Indonesia, and that applies to all of Asia, is relationship-based. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And I think, to give you a little rational explanation about it, why is it actually relationship-based? Because, unfortunately, the rule of law doesn't work that well sometimes. Yeah? Meaning to say that if you want to resolve a problem, it's best to have a good relationship. Yeah? Because that person will do whatever he and she can do in order to resolve the problem, because there's a relationship.
Fantastic, yeah. I mean, you said at the beginning, you know, Asia is not just one big country, but there are certain cultural traits indeed,
yeah,
right?
but relationships are generically important
something very,
all
very
over
important.
Asia.
Absolutely fantastic. So we came from the big bird view. Now let's take a very concrete example. I was thrilled to hear about your investment in IOConnect. That is a very, very beautiful case study, I think, particularly for the topic of this panel. Do you want to explore and explain a little bit?
Well, first of all, I have to start off earlier than IOConnect. There was a time when there was a company, that company still exists in Germany, called Rocket Internet. They have this business model where they do very fast copycats all over the world in markets that are interesting. So Indonesia is interesting because it's a large consumer market. So very quickly they established an e-commerce platform called Lazada. I think some of us have heard about Lazada, right? And it became very big in Indonesia, and at some point in time they sold out. To whom? To Alibaba. Because Alibaba didn't have the time to establish their presence in Indonesia at the speed needed, and so they bought basically Lazada. But why do I mention this? Because many of the Germans that established foot in Indonesia, they became entrepreneurs. They stayed there. Some of them married Indonesian ladies, and they established their own startups. There's one guy that I work with, it's Jakob Rost. He is originally from Leipzig, and he was one of the directors of Lazada, and now he is the founder and the chairman, or no, I'm the chairman, the CEO of IOConnect. So what's IOConnect? IOConnect is an API builder. Basically, application programming interface is like the infrastructure of fintech. Call it tech-fin, not fintech. Yeah. Because it's really technology that makes fintech possible, is you have to have this interface. Yeah. So he, and how do I get to know him? Because I know a lot of Germans, of course, that are all resident in Indonesia, and so through that, I came to that, basically, yeah. But this is an example of how this whole thing developed, and iConnect right now is the largest platform for API building in Indonesia.
Yeah, that's a very beautiful example. And for us to try to understand what made that possible, were these the connections that you had built here in Berlin? So you were, I mean, what makes such success cases
I think
possible?
what made it possible, looking from Jacob's side, is basically he knew Indonesia already. Okay. Because he spent some 5 to 7 years in Indonesia already. He knew the culture, he knew how to get things done, and he knew how to attract investors and talk to customers, talk to the government, everything he knew already. So he didn't start from scratch zero. So you see, there was a sort of preparation period where he went through being somebody at the board of Lazada, and then he applied all the knowledge acquired for his own startup.
Fantastic. Let's bring the Vietnamese perspective in, because I think that's a country that's still very, very dear to your heart, right? So again, coming from the bird view, how would you assess currently the collaboration, the economic ties between Vietnam and, well, let's say Europe, or in particular here, Germany, Berlin?
That could even better, always, but it's actually still great. And particularly, it's not only Vietnam and Germany, but also, as you mentioned, Vietnam and the EU. Because they signed 2 years ago a free trade agreement between EU and Vietnam, and this was a huge buzz for the entire Vietnamese economy. So they had a growth rate last year 7%, this year they expect 5%, next year then again 7%. So it's really, truly great. And it's across all industries. So we can talk about food as well as the digital business, the classical industry. Certainly they have some issues. They have a lack of industry in terms of infrastructure, and here particularly energy. But they would like to leapfrog. As many countries in Asia, they don't want to make the entire development starting with the different sectors and then coming into the fourth industrial revolution. No, they can immediately jump into it because you need not that much infrastructure. You need a desk, broadband connectivity, and a computer and or smartphone, and that's it. And as long as you have the entrepreneurial spirit, then it will fly. And the people there have enormous, amazing, tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. That's really fascinating.
Absolutely. We talked about that previously. And for those who did not yet have a chance actually to come and visit, could you pinpoint, maybe even through some very concrete case studies, specific technologies or specific industries where you see, for example, Vietnam really having an edge compared to what you see here in Europe?
Again, so I would say across all industries, I'm sort of biased. I'm in the board of the biggest rice producer, and it's fascinating. You think rice is a agriculture, but it's really the high tech. So we have apps for our farmers. We have 20,000 smallholder farmers. We train them to deal with water, with fertilizer, to manage ESG. We provide primary healthcare for them, and they have drones to bring out the fertilizer, and they have all on their laptop and their notebook and smartphone to do their business, and that's really fascinating. Other things are, we have very young entrepreneurs, and it's a generational question. The younger people, like you here, most of you here in the audience, so they are all very good in English. They have absolutely clue what's cutting edge technology, and they can deal with. And that's really fascinating. When I started, I'm chairman of a small venture fund in Vietnam, started 4 or 5 years ago. They have been more or less copycats. Not that bad, but it was not super innovative. But now we have really deep tech startups, young people working on AI, working Web3, blockchain, whatever, you name it, in Vietnam, and that's really fascinating. So I think it's truly good, and that's what strikes me every time when I'm there.
Yeah, I think we talked again a little bit about Web3, and I don't want to make this too much about Web3 or blockchain technology, but interestingly, when we think about really entrepreneurship without borders, or technology should not have borders, it's interesting, right, how quickly actually countries through that technology can leapfrog ahead and play a role, right, at a global level. Yeah. But particularly, I mean, you are involved with Crypto Valley Ventures. You're very often in Zug, right, which is apparently one of the crypto hotbeds of Europe or the world. How would you compare actually the state of advancement?
I mean, I would say in general, that's my theory, that if you have a new technology, the first adopter are certainly the inventor, the nerds, then the youth, then the economy. the people, and then at the very end, the administrator, the regulator, and the politicians. So you have a small window of opportunity where you can check out all the technologies before the regulator come into play and stop new ideas and innovations or slow them down. And we have seen the development in Switzerland, which is not that bad, so the regulators have been very smart on this end. We have since 2019 a blockchain distributed ledger act, so they let us do what we'd like to do. But coming back to Asia, there is not anything else even in preparation. So now you can do what you would like to do. You can check out new technologies, you can check out new use cases for the technologies, and do it now before the regulators will wake up and start with some crazy ideas how to regulate it and how to make money out of it for taxpayers' benefit. So I think this is what now is in Asia, and in comparison also to Switzerland or incumbent nations like Germany.
Fantastic. And we can get back at the end. I had a question a little bit more about what can governments or we here do to facilitate that exchange, and regulatory frameworks, particularly in some industries like fintech or so, are important for sure. Do you have any case studies in mind, like of a successful expansion from Vietnam to Germany or to Europe?
Yeah, so we have a young woman in our portfolio, and Lin Pham, and she was in a family who has a construction company. She was looking every day out of the window and saying, oh, look, the trucks are always coming empty back home. And then she had the idea to create something like Uber for trucks. And then she had a crazy idea back then. She was 27, and was 28. She had already 27,000 truck drivers in Vietnam under contract with her small app. And then I made a trip with the portfolio companies out of this venture fund to the Silicon Valley. Because, and that's good for Vietnamese, but also for others here, since all the people in the United States, they quite often forget this, but coming from outside, if you're not Indian, so there are a lot of relationships to the countries where their parents, grandparents are coming from. And due to the war, there's a strong expatriate community of Vietnamese also in the Silicon Valley. So we visited Uber, and back then the CTO, he's not there anymore, he comes from Vietnam as well. He was a boat people in the 70s and 80s, and he was quite open, and they started a cooperation. So that is an example where a young Vietnamese woman, not even 30, started a business from her small city and town, and went to Silicon Valley and got some investments and partnership with Uber. I think it's not bad.
Fantastic. That's a beautiful case study. Yeah. Well, that's worth an applause, right? I think afterwards we'll need to discuss why did she go to Silicon Valley and not to Berlin. But let me pull back, actually, Ilham, from Indonesia. So for those who did not yet have the opportunity to visit beautiful Indonesia, you should definitely do. But tell us a little bit more about the state of the ecosystem in Indonesia. There are some industries, some technologies. I think we talked about circular economy. So there are certain things that are really, really top and rising.
Okay. You mean in general, not only AI and stuff, right?
No, absolutely. Can be broader.
Well, I think at the moment we have basically a economic development which is interesting to watch because it's related to the electric vehicles. Indonesia is the largest producer of nickel in the world. And so the nickel is now not allowed to be exported anymore unless it's processed in Indonesia. I mean to say the end goal is to basically have battery production in Indonesia. Batteries are built, basically contain lithium these days, but the cathode is always nickel, mangan, and cobalt, right? So the NMC core. And guess what? All the Chinese manufacturers have established foot in Indonesia. They build smelters, etc. Now other countries come too. From France, there's one, and there's also, I think there's talk. I haven't seen any decision regarding German companies to establish foot in Indonesia, but I think that is something to be watched because it would entail further, call it downstreaming to electric vehicles and maybe the whole ecosystem around electric vehicles, whatever they are. There can be cars, motorcycles. Important to be mentioned because Indonesia is a country with more than 120 million motorcycles, and it's the third largest market after China and India. And so all of that needs and has to be electrified. Because at the same time, Indonesia is also one of the largest carbon emitter. Although we have one of the 3 large rainforests in the world, besides Brazil and Congo. So Indonesia is the other one around the equator. So that is actually also another thing to be mentioned, because I believe there will be, and it's already happening, a lot of so-called climate tech, talking about monitoring of the rainforest, calculating carbon credits, et cetera, circular economy comes also into play there. So whatever is needed for the forthcoming decarbonization of the industry, maybe as a possible Industry 5.0 topic, 5.0, not 4.0, is a total decarbonization based on circular economy and localization or hyper-localization of the economy, basically distributed manufacturing and these kind of things. Right? So yeah, so that is to be mentioned. That's a big part of Indonesia. And other than that, digital economy is, of course, a major topic. Last year, Indonesia was the host of G20, and there were 3 topics, basically, of G20, which is digital economy, then the transition of the energy to renewable energy, and then we were still in COVID mode, and so we had to say a few words about the global health system. But talking about the energy, Indonesia has signed the JETP, Just Energy Transition Partnership. I think also important to be mentioned because it's the 2nd country in the world after South Africa. And the focus in Indonesia is completely on renewable energy, so no electric vehicles being part of JETP. And I think there will be a lot of innovations also go into that direction because it's a G7 signing with Indonesia, right? So yeah, I think that is maybe what I need to mention here.
No, absolutely. And I was wondering if that was the motivation for you then to launch actually the Habibi Innovation Incubator platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more.
Well, as you can imagine, for somebody who lived 31 years in this country, I have a large network and cultural experience here. This is my home, away from home. I have 2 homes, it's Indonesia and Germany is both at the same level. And so I would love to bring more Germany into Indonesia and more Indonesia into Germany, right? And call it the EU-ASEAN bridge. Indonesia is and remains a very large country in ASEAN. If you see from the GDP standpoint of view, it's 41% of GDP of ASEAN is in Indonesia alone, with 285 million people and blah. And you know, it's a big country. And why not have? I mean, we already have a sister citizenship between Berlin and Jakarta. I think there needs to be more going both ways, right? And I'm saying both ways, yeah? There is also something that Indonesia can contribute here and the other way around, different things, right? I think it's, of course, Germany is mostly known for its technology, but also for the people that are highly educated and very innovative and very genau, precise, yeah. And Indonesia is maybe people that are extremely friendly. They are do a very good service. They're very kind people. I think very good in the service industry. I think it's a natural talent for that because they're smiling all the time. And yeah,
you mean very, very complimentary then to Europe, or?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It all depends on the weather, I think, in Europe, right? Anyway, yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that the Habibi Incubator wants to do to bring those 2 countries together, but it's, of course, beyond Germany. I mean, I think there's other countries in Europe that are also very interesting for Indonesia, and there are also other countries in ASEAN that are interesting, like Vietnam. I mean, I've been to Vietnam numerous times. I'm fascinated by the energy you can find there, particularly with the young people, and the speed of development is enormous. I mean, we've seen a company called, what is it, VinFast, right? It's a electric vehicle from nowhere, out of nowhere, suddenly they're there, and then I think you can already buy VinFast cars in Germany, right?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about motorbikes. It actually really reminded me of my trip to Vietnam, but yeah, absolutely. There's one question I really ask both of you the same question, because again, trying to understand what is really needed to foster the ties, that collaboration, that exchange, having German founders and companies be successful in, for example, Vietnam or Indonesia, vice versa. From a government level, obviously from a private level, what is needed? We just cloned both of you into several hundred, and people who make the difference. What is really needed?
So we need more engagement from Germany. We need more engagement from Europe entirely as EU in Asia. That's a simple thing. So I just coming from Singapore this morning. There was a huge conference of Kaixin, which is a Chinese media agency, private, and there have been so many different countries represented. One was missing. I mean, I was there, but I'm a private man now and living in
So we have to
Switzerland.
clone
even,
you,
right?
basically,
So
yeah.
certainly, so I was saying, yeah, I was once in Germany, but I'm now in Switzerland, so a little bit odd. So, but seriously, I mean, the biggest free trade zone in the world is the Comprehensive Regional Economic Partnership, and it's without US and it's without EU. I mean, we should realize what happens outside the EU and outside our current horizon. That's the first thing. Second, it's a question of exchange, because you ask with a comment why we have not been in Berlin. The good news is, so it was based on a trip from the Berlin startup community. We once created this German Silicon Valley Accelerator, which is still existing. We made a trip in May 2019 to the Silicon Valley, and I said, oh, that's a nice idea. And in October, we went then, with the help, by the way, from the Berlin startup community with the Vietnamese companies. But the problem is, we went there because, honestly, there's the money. The biggest venture companies in the world are in the Silicon Valley, by far. And this is truly a shitty pity. Because, I mean, the Asian people, the young entrepreneurs, are as creative, as dynamic, and as entrepreneurial as the peers in the US. I would say even a little bit more, right? Because they should even be better to get even less money, right? And I would love to bring these companies to us, in this case, I mean Asia, also Berlin, and not that we have to make a trip to them. Because if you are then there, then the second stuff starts. If you ask, oh, why don't you invest into a Vietnamese or Berlin startup? They will say, oh, that's easy. Why don't you join us here in the Bay Area? Then we make an investment. That's what you don't want to hear. So I think we should highlight what we have, and we should foster the relationship by exchange. COVID is over, friends, so we can travel again, and so we should do it. And you can get to know people. Of course, you can have a conference call via video call, but to get to know the people and to feel the entrepreneurial spirit, the dynamic and the vibrance, I think you should go there. And the other way around. And I think that's what we needed.
Yeah, that's what we said, the relationship element, right? That's,
and the others are not waiting for us.
Now, tell me, and again, in some areas, for example, fintech or so, the fact that Europe becomes so much more conscious about needing to be a homogeneous market, right? So we have ESMA, we have MiCA, we have all of these new initiatives. You think they're really going to make a difference, or we need more of them?
Yeah, okay. Let's be say it this way. So I don't want to criticize them, but I think it's, you need the personal exchange and the initiatives. It's not only to have projects and programs. You have quite a lot, and even on the European level, which is good. But it's more to also be visible and presented there with our top leader, and that means political, but also business leader there. That they say, this is an important region, we love to be here, we understand that there is a future. See even the demographic development. Our average age here in Germany is around 47, somewhat like this, 47. In Asia, at least in Vietnam, it's around 30, so it's slightly down, and 100 million people, so right, and a lot of entrepreneurs. And if you go to Africa, we are talking about 19 years. So I think this is where the future is, and it's great that Berlin is looking outside with this conference, yeah. But it would be even better if Germany or the entire European Union would look outside. And by the way,
and be there, right?
To be fair, some are doing this. The French are pretty smart. So when it comes to France first, they are there. They don't talk about it like others, but they are there. The same is with the colleagues from the UK. And Germany is a little bit sleepy.
Well, here we go. Wake up, yes, and that was the wake-up call. I can echo that from a Hong Kong perspective. You mentioned it already as well. More top people from government levels, the relationship piece, also more. What else? Again, what do you think is that one thing that would really make a difference?
Well, I think that has been ongoing for so many years already, which is technology transfer, right? Technology transfer is in the form of basically people. So giving more opportunities for Indonesians to go to Germany and study and do research is already happening. Yeah. But I think should be more.
The talent piece.
Yeah, but also vice versa. I think there should be also more Germans coming to Indonesia and have a look what's available in Indonesia. There's some scientific disciplines which are uniquely positioned in Indonesia because of the environment, right? Yeah, talking about biodiversity, Indonesia is number 2 in the world after Brazil. If you include the marine biodiversity, which because Indonesia is 70% water, you have the largest biodiversity in the world is in Indonesia. So there's a lot of potential for research in Indonesia. I think research should be a strong basis for collaboration, and anyway, it's a basis for innovation as well, anyway. Yeah. So there should be more collaboration in that regard. Yeah.
Fantastic. We're going to run out of time, but
Yeah.
I'll have my investor hat on for a second. And why not take advantage of the opportunity to ask both of you as investors and with really thorough understanding of the market, the stock picker question. And not the stock picker, but if there's one company you would encourage everybody to look at, which company would have been, or even to invest into, even though we have to make a big disclaimer in terms of investing into startups is highly risky.
Including our own companies?
Including your own. No shameless plugs. Only third party, yeah. Anyone that comes top of mind?
In Vietnam, a company? Or in
For
general?
example, or in Germany.
Okay.
I don't mind, either way.
Okay, let me think 1 second. It's difficult. We cannot say that we should recommend because we're not allowed, but we
Should
can say
look
that
into, exactly, not
Yeah.
to invest. Again, huge disclaimer. Investing into early stage companies is highly risky. You can lose all your money. But you can also make times 100 or 1,000. But
yeah.
you know, we
There's
still
so
have
many.
we still have 5 seconds. Well, you know what? Why don't then we make it very inclusive and we'll invite everybody actually to follow up after this panel and have
Yeah.
a conversation
And I mean-
or pitch your company. You know, again, so we have 2 amazing investors very engaged.
In general, you
here.
should look more into regions and countries to be engaged there. And it doesn't matter if it's a XYZ company, but it's really good to be in the countries and help the people. Look at the people and you will see they're truly great.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Unfortunately, the time is up, but could you please help me in giving a huge hand of applause to these 2 gentlemen? Thank you very much.